Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to our neighborhood. I'm your host, Margaret Behrens, and I want to welcome you to the program. Today, as my special guest, I have Diana Longrie, and Diana's here with a very special announcement. Welcome, Diana.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on your program. It was a welcome call when you gave me a jingle on the phone and said, "Say, Diana, I've got a program. I'm shooting a program, and I'd like you to come on and make your announcement for the citizens of Maplewood."
Absolutely. You know, our program's all about things that are very important happening in our neighborhood, in our community, and I really am so honored that you decided to come and share it with everybody here today.
Yes. Well, in the last few months, I have had quite a number of citizens either stop by my office or even stop me like in the store or in the restaurant and say, Diana, will you run for mayor again? And I gave it great thought because, first of all, running for mayor is a lot of work, although I really enjoy it. And also being mayor, it's a very it's a very important position for the citizens, that they have somebody who is out there who is going to be their champion. So it's not a position that I would take lightly. Certainly I've got the experience, but I decided, in weighing all the factors and talking with my family and my friends, I decided that running for mayor again would be important for Maplewood. There's a lot of benefits, I believe, that I can bring to the citizens of Maplewood to return their voice back to the city council meetings and to better involve them in the creation of the public policy in our community. Just recently I gave a talk at the Critical Thinking Club of St. Paul, and the topic that I spoke on was whether or not the idea of citizen engagement in the creation of public policy, is it compatible with a Plan B city like Maplewood is? Because you see, and I'd like to get into this in a little bit more detail as the show goes on, but you see with the Plan B city, whether or not citizens get to speak or get to participate in public policy creation in their community is really left to the will of either the city administrators or the elected officials. That unless there is a state statute that requires a public hearing, there really is nothing in a Plan B government that mandates that citizens get to have a voice. And so, sometime along the way, I hope to have parts of my speech to the Critical Thinkers Club of St. Paul actually here on SCC, and be able to have people be able to listen and to view it, because many of the people who were at the club, they came away going, wow, that they didn't, they never really thought of it in the terms that I placed it.
Right. And I think it's really important for people to know that, when you're on the city council and stuff, the mayor, that's one vote. It's just the same as the other council members. You have one vote. And it's very important that everybody on the council be a good representative of the citizens, the people that elected you, the voters, but it's also a representation of our city as a whole. And I think you belong to all these different organizations and stuff, and you really represent Maplewood in a positive light. And thanks for that.
Well, thanks. And you brought up another, and when you were talking, it brought up another point to my mind that I think is very critical as well, is that there will be times where there is a minority voice in the community or on the council. And part of what I think our founding fathers and also elected officials today, have to always keep in the back of their mind is, how do you protect the voice of the minority? Because certainly we do take a vote and actions are taken by the majority. but it isn't such that the majority totally overruns the minority and doesn't give them an opportunity to speak. And I think that we have seen some of that in Maplewood over the last few years, that if you have an opinion that is in the minority viewpoint or is different than the council majority, then basically they decide, well, we don't want to hear it. And I don't think that's right. And I can remember many times when I was mayor that there were people who came forward who had a different point of view from the majority council. Because keep in mind, while I was mayor for 4 years, we had 2 different types of majorities. For the first 2 years, there was one majority, but then in the second 2 years, there was a different majority. And in all cases, as the mayor, you have to ensure that your minority members of your council have that opportunity to speak. But let me give you an example of a change in the city council policies and procedures that has happened during the last few years after I was no longer on the council, that actually serves to silence the minority council members. And this is a policy that I would reverse because I think it's dead wrong. And that is this, is that previously when I was mayor, if somebody on the council, a council member, wanted to put something on the agenda, they could simply do that. All they had to do was tell the city manager by the Monday before the council meeting, a week in advance, because keep in mind the city manager in Maplewood, because it's a Plan B city, they control the agenda. They manage the day-to-day affairs. They're the ones that make all the decisions up at City Hall about how the operations are. And so a city council person could come to the manager and say, I want to put this issue on the agenda so we can talk about it as a council. Because they can't talk about it behind the scenes with a quorum, because then they'd be in violation of open meeting law. And there were also times where then the city manager might even assist that council member in putting together data so then they could present whatever that topic is to the rest of the council members. So you see, whether or not if you're a minority member of the council or a majority member of the council, you had that flexibility. It wasn't dependent upon whether or not you got the approval of the rest of the council. The policy has now been changed that this is how I understand it, that you have to bring an item before the council at a council meeting, and then the council basically votes on whether or not they're going to have it on the agenda or let you put it on the agenda to even discuss it. And this recently happened at a recent council meeting. One council member, 2 council members wanted to put on the agenda an issue that a citizen had over by Joy Park. And then when it came up, they had to put it, they were told by the city manager, you have to put it on council presentations, not on the agenda. So that way then the council can decide whether or not they're going to even address it as part of a council agenda item. And I think that's wrong, because that does silence the minority on your council.
Absolutely, it does. And silencing the citizens, silencing the council members who the citizens elect. Yeah, that is wrong. Absolutely.
And people, a lot of times, they don't think about those kinds of mechanics of what happens behind the scenes with the council members. But you see, even when you take it another step further, what kinds of steps recently in the last few years were taken to silence citizen comment? And that was to remove the visitor presentations, or in other council meetings they might call it citizen comment or public comment. In Maplewood, forever it was called visitor presentations for whatever reason. And while I was mayor, we had it near the beginning of the meeting so that citizens could come and speak. address issues that were not on the agenda, be able to address their issues in front of the entire council.
That was so nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and see, and also be part of that agenda, so that when the minutes came out, it said who appeared for that public comment, that's visitor presentations, and what was the topic of their concerns. And again, that's very important, because historically, you can look back in Maplewood City Council minutes and see who came up and what they were speaking about. For instance, like years ago, Emil Sturzenegger. A lot of our viewers will probably remember Emil Sturzenegger. You know, a pillar of our community, lived here all of his life, and very influential in making sure that we had the walking and bicycle path that we have down in South Maplewood there, down by London Lane. And, you know, he came before the council several times to talk about this idea of having Maplewood be split up into a ward system. And if that wouldn't have been part of the city council minutes, that discussion of a citizen would be lost.
Right. Yeah, and that would be very unfortunate. And I would think that, like, the Maplewood Historical Society would have something to say about that, because that, you know, it's part of history and it's really important to the city. But I remember Emo coming to every citizens forum, and for an elderly gentleman, he participated, and it was really neat and such a wealth of information. It was really, really cool to have him there.
Yeah, you know, thank you for bringing that up about the Citizens Forum, because that, again, is another forum for citizen engagement with their elected official that has been eliminated over the last few years. There was citizens viewers may be thinking about, you know, what was that all about? But you see, way back in Maplewood's history, I think it goes back to when Judge Gary Bastian was mayor of Maplewood. He started up what was called the Mayor's Forum. And it was an opportunity for citizens to go and meet with the mayor. It was held, I believe, like the first Saturday of every month. And from there, that tradition started, so that every mayor after him had the Mayor's Forum. And so that includes not only, you know, Gary Bastian, but also George Rosbach, Bob Cardinal, myself. And then when our current mayor became mayor, he decided somehow or other that it was not an effective means of citizen engagement. And I'm not quite sure how he arrived at that. But then it was like, well, the council members were going to then take turns as to who was going to be the representative from the city council to attend this forum, this monthly forum. And the participation, I think it started to die down, and it just sort of fell away. And I've been giving great thought to why did it fall away. And I think part of the reason is because that citizens who came there felt that whatever they were talking about was, one, falling on deaf ears, and then two, that the majority of the meeting was taken up by giving a presentation to the citizens rather than saying this is an open forum for you can bring your ideas, your concerns, your complaints, whatever you've got to say, bring them on in, let's spread them on the table, and let's address them and talk about how can, you know, we sort them out into ideas, into concerns, into complaints, and how are we going to then, you know, I mean, as either a mayor or a council person, how are we going to help the citizens to be their advocate, to help them get something accomplished? And I think that that's why it died away. And then they decided, oh, just eliminate it. And it was called, like I said, the Mayor's Forum. And about halfway through my term, I actually changed the name of it because I found that it wasn't about me talking and about me giving a presentation or staff giving a presentation. It was about the citizens who were around the table who came there to discuss their community. So I thought, you know what? Why would we call it the Mayor's Forum? Let's call it the Citizens Forum and be, upfront that that's what it's about.
Right.
And I know that you attended some of those too.
Oh, absolutely, I did. It was so neat because people came and they had such cool ideas. They were excited to be there. But I have to tell you, meeting in that Maplewood room got a little cramped.
It did.
Yes, and there were so many people, and people at the end there, they wanted it twice a month.
They did. Indeed, they did. And that's why it bothers me when I hear today, when I'm watching the council meetings and they talk about that venue, that it was not being used, that the people weren't coming, that it was, somehow or other that it was of a minimal value. And yet I did calculations of the number of people who attended the first Saturday of every month. And the last year, we had an average of like 21 people who, and I think that if it serves me correct, who came on an average that we had that many people. And they weren't always the same people. There were some people who were very committed to coming, like you mentioned Emil Sturzenegger, and there were several other people who loved to come there because it gave them an opportunity to talk about their community with their neighbors.
Right.
And one lady even came to starting to bring cookies for all of us, which was, a lot of fun because it really, and we held it at City Hall, so people knew when it was, where it was, and we talked about issues. And typically the way that I would run it is that I would have everybody go around the table first of all to say what their name was and what part of Maplewood that they lived in, because Maplewood is so geographically diverse that, it's helpful to know, okay, who lives on the west end, north, south, the central part, whatever. And then have them say why they came. Was it because they had a topic or an issue that was something they wanted to address, or did they just come there to listen and to put in their 2 cents when something came up that they thought, oh, gee whiz, they'd like to talk about? And then after hearing what everybody had to say, then I could put it into groupings. So say, for instance, when we had an incident down by Lake Phelan where a lady had been assaulted, that was one particular citizens forum where we had a very high attendance. I think we probably could have had even, close to, almost 30 people at that one. Mm-hmm. And because it was an issue that was current, it was on people's minds. They wanted to know what was going on. And so they came. And so there were probably, 7 people that was the issue they wanted to talk about. But yet then there were other people who had other issues that they wanted to discuss. And we changed the policy when I became mayor that prior to that, the city manager never came to the Citizens Forum. And so it would be just the mayor, and of course in a Plan B city, the mayor has no power or authority to take action on anything. And so I thought, this seems to me to be rather, it's sort of like that telephone game, where I hear it from somebody and then I go tell somebody else. Mm-hmm. Why not have the city manager there?
Right.
Because then they can hear directly from the citizens. And then citizens also don't have to call up the city manager and try to make an appointment and all this other kind of monkey business. Just have them come in for 2 hours once Saturday, once a month on a Saturday, and be there.
Right.
And that worked out beautifully, because then the citizens knew that they were talking not only to the mayor, but they were talking to the big chief, the one who's got the authority to make the change.
Right.
But then at City Hall, if the city manager heard that somebody needed a report or that they needed a form, he could just get up, go to his office down the hallway, print it out, bring it in, and hand it to them.
Right.
How easy is that?
Right.
And people really appreciated the fact that the city manager was there to be of assistance.
The other thing that I think was really, really nice and people appreciated so much was they weren't limited on time. And when it got to them and their topic came up, they were able to discuss freely and completely to their satisfaction their topic. It was not a ask the question and somebody will get back to you maybe.
Right.
It was a discussion and people appreciated that, and a lot of people got resolved to the topics that they came for. They got their question answered and they were very satisfied.
Right, and and I remember one time that when I was mayor at the Citizens Forum, actually council member Kathy Juniman's husband came to the forum. And he was concerned about what was going on at that time in the savannah, because we had a number of trees that had fallen down because of a windstorm or that they were old or something. And so they fell down, and so there were other citizens in the neighborhood that were calling up City Hall and saying, why don't you cut those trees that fell over, cut them up and move them out of there so that they're not an eyesore, okay? So the city manager proceeded to do that because it kind of made sense, okay? Because here you've got trees that have fallen over, you can see them from the road, and maybe this is good stewardship, we should do that. Well, Kathy Juniman's husband came to the meeting because he wanted to voice his concern about the fact that he wasn't happy that those trees had been cut up and moved out, because he wanted to talk about the importance of the ecology and the importance for smaller animals to have some of that downfall, so that way they have a place to either live or shelter or whatever. So, he came and he talked about that, and I appreciate that because I hadn't quite thought of it from that perspective.
Sure.
And so not everybody who came had something that they were happy with what the city was doing. He came because he was not happy that they had cut up the downfall. And keep in mind, this was back in 2006. But now here we are, fast forward. If we would have had a citizens forum, I would believe that many citizens would have gone to the citizens forum to talk about the clear cutting of that very same savannah that Kathy Juniman's husband was concerned about us cutting and cleaning up one downfall tree and the impact it might have on the animals and the environment. If we would have had a citizens forum and an opportunity for citizens to come before the council to talk about something that wasn't on the agenda, I would be willing to bet that they would have had a handful of people coming before them and talking about how disgusted they are that the savannah has now been clear cut.
Absolutely.
Totally devoid, other than the 15 trees big trees that are left. But you see, it's so much easier to take action if and weather the storm of criticism when there's no avenues for criticism.
Right.
And while they can do what they want because they're the elected officials, I don't think that's right. I think that you need to be able to take the criticism as well as the compliments and maybe talk to the citizens before you make the decisions that make them angry.
Absolutely, because, the citizens are the city.
That's right.
And when you're elected, it's my belief that you're there to serve. And you're there to be the voice of the citizens. So you're their mouthpiece. You do what they want you to do.
Well, and one of the ways, this is the way I always looked at my position as being an elected official. Not that I'm the one that has all the answers, not that I'm the one that's got all the right decisions, but that I am the person who can help citizens better access their municipal government. How do they use their municipal government to the best that's available to them? Sometimes citizens don't know what are the avenues that they can take in order to get certain data that's public data. Well, as the elected official, rather than trying to hide the ball and keep citizens from getting public data and just hoping that maybe they'll never figure it out, I see my role as something totally different. I see my role as giving them the clues and the process that they can go through. That's the legitimate process, that's the legal process, that's the established process to get what they need, either whether or not if it's help, whether or not if it's the data they need, that's public data, or whether or not if it's an opportunity to participate in shaping the public policy of our community. I fully believe that. And you know, oftentimes you can take a look at, this is my own theory, you could take a look at an elected official and you can put them into one of two categories. Are they an elected official who is trying to protect the government from the citizens? Or are they the type of elected official who's trying to help the citizens get their foot into the front door of City Hall so that they can come on in and participate? And that is something I ask the viewers to consider when they're looking at the candidates that are going to be there this fall running for mayor, because I'm betting that there's going to be at least 5, and I think that pretty much everybody can figure out who the 5 might be, because most of them are all the same people that ran last time and the time before. Sometimes things never change. Most of them are from the old boys club, by the way.
Right, and I think that's why the city's in the predicament that they're in right now, is because of the Boys Club. Mm-hmm. And I think with your experience and your passion to serve and citizen engagement, that I think, you know, you're the best choice.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, thank you. Well, you know, one of the theories that I had in my speech that I recently gave to the Critical Thinking Club of St. Paul is the model of citizen engagement, that I really see that there are, well, there's really 4, and I guess in my theory there's 4 models of citizen engagement in municipal government, and not talking about the type of citizen engagement where it's initiated by the citizens. I mean, citizens can always initiate some kind of action to participate, whether or not if it's a petition or a rally or whatever, you know, but not talking about that, but talking about government promoted or government process to get citizen engagement. The first one is no process and no engagement, and just the decision, we're not going to ask the citizens. That certainly is a model. It's a basically zero model. Then there's the model, and our viewers can think about this if they've ever gone to various meetings or went to certain community outreach meetings, see which ones of these fit within these models. But there's the one model where they've already made the decisions. The decision makers have already made the decisions. And in like a Plan B city, most likely those decisions that are made, quite frankly, are made by the city administrative staff, and then they get the buy-in of the council. Oftentimes, that's the way it works. Sometimes it's initiated by council, but usually the council doesn't manage their own agenda, so they're busy just working on the agenda that the city administration has given them. So it gives you a viewpoint of how the dynamics work. But the decisions are already made, and then they go after the fact, oh, you know, I guess we probably should make it look like we got some citizen engagement here. So, well, let's just call up a quick little meeting of some citizens, have a workshop, have them all come in, whatever, have them say a few things. Kind of reminds you of the trash hauling meetings now, doesn't it?
Yes, very sad.
and then when all is said and done, and after everyone's had their say, well, it doesn't matter anyway what they said, because the decision was already made. They take a vote. Aha, there you go. Well, we did give you an opportunity to speak, but we already had our mind made up. That's one model. Another model is more of a different, a little bit different, where it's a little bit more finesse to it, okay? And this is the model where they've pretty much got their decision made up, their mind made up, the decisions are made, but they go, you know, we need to have some more citizen engagement in this process to help us tweak our ultimate decision we know we want to make, okay? So then they form a task force and they have a facilitator, and then what they do is that they have various people from the community sit on the task force, and then the facilitator helps guide them through the data that's supplied by the city, not always unbiased data, but you know, they guide them through that so that in the end, oh my goodness, look at this, the end result, wow. It's just kind of what we were expecting, what we were hoping. Isn't this amazing? And this process, what a lovely process. Look how well it worked. We spent 18 months on it, and we came up with the same result. Oh, beautiful, beautiful community engagement. Well, you know, a citizen only has to be engaged in that once or twice to realize that somehow along the way, there's been a manipulation of the process of actually truly having citizen engagement. And then there's the last process, which the decision, there's an issue, okay? But the decision hasn't been made yet. There could be several different options of what could be done to address this issue, but that nobody's really made any firm ideas in their mind what it should be. And so then they form together the citizens, and here's the issue, here's the different ideas that we could have of what our solutions might be. But in order to do that effectively, so that process doesn't fall back to being number 1 or number 2 or number 3 that I described, is that there has to be a commitment before the process starts. 1, that we're going to give unbiased information to the citizens. Unbiased, on both sides. You know, the pros and cons all the way through. We're not going to try to manipulate the outcome. 2, the city administrators and the elected officials have to make a commitment in the beginning that whatever the outcome is, that they're going to go with it. Now, have you ever seen that process happen?
Not here.
No. And see, here's the thing is that I think that oftentimes elected officials and city administrators are afraid to implement that process that I just described because they're concerned that, well, the citizens don't know all the information, so they won't be able to come up with the right decision. We have all the background information, so we really know what we really got to do. I don't think that that's an accurate statement. I think it's a fear, but I don't think it's necessarily accurate, because I do believe that citizens, if they're given unbiased information and they are then helped with figuring out the critical thinking process of how to look at that data, the various considerations they have to do, that they will come to a good and balanced decision for their community.
Right. Absolutely.
I seriously do believe that. But you see, it takes more time. Democracy is messy. You're going to have people who are going to be a little hot under the collar from time to time. But you know, you just got to have people skills to figure out how to help them through that. And I think that that's one thing also that's very important in an elected official, is that they can deal well with conflict, that they can deal well with disagreement, and that they can deal well with criticism. And again, that's something that I ask the viewers, that when they're looking at the races coming up this fall in Maplewood, because we will have the position of mayor and 2 council people up for election, that those are the things that you look at. I mean, what's their willingness to listen to citizens? What's their ability to deal with conflict, to deal with criticism, to basically weigh and balance different kinds of things to be able to come up with a good balanced decision that meets the needs of our community. And Maplewood, as a first-ring suburb, we do have a lot of things that we have to address. You know, I could go on and on about all the things we need to address, but I know you have some questions.
Wow, there's a lot to address for sure. I know people appreciate you because you have the respect, you're upfront, you don't pull punches, you tell people your bottom line, and you work with people, and that's so important. And I think that's a sign of respect to the people for sure. But above all, you're honest with people. And when you have a decision, if people want to know what you think about it or how you came to that, you'll take the time to explain it to them. And I think that's really important. And when you do that, then they're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, you know. And then they'll say, well, maybe would this work? You know, then they get in a conversation, and you can have a respectful dialogue. And that's where you are above and separated from the rest.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, and I do believe it is important to be able to tell citizens why you voted the way you voted. And that if you don't have a solid basis and a fundamental basis in fact as to why you voted the way you voted, then you need to do a little bit more in-depth study on the issue before you had voted. That's the way I personally really feel. And I believe that citizens are entitled to an explanation of a vote. And it may be a vote that is not popular with maybe some particular special interest groups. I mean, I can tell you that there was one vote that I took the last year I was mayor, and I was the sole vote that voted no. But I also knew that we were in the throes of a critical economic downturn. This is in 2009. And the housing market was plummeting. People were losing their jobs. There are a lot of concerns in the economy. And yet here was a vote before us where we were being pressured to take something that I felt was going to increase a financial commitment of the city that should not have been taken. And so I voted no, and I put it on the record and in the minutes that I knew that this was not going to be a popular vote with a particular special interest group, that I felt that it was in the best interest of the city to hold the bottom line, the financial bottom line, because of the economy that we were in, and that I knew that it could potentially be a campaign issue in 2009. And indeed it was, because you see that special interest group then worked and put in independent expenditures into my opponent's campaign. I don't know the exact numbers, but if you were to try to calculate all the postage, that was the full postage. They didn't use a bulk mailing rate. They used regular postage.
Wow.
Yeah. And they sent out full color cards, at least 2 or 3, maybe 4. They had live callers calling, telemarketing the homes in Maplewood at least twice through the campaign. Now you think about how much all of that costs. I'm guessing, based upon my experience with campaigns and all, I'm sure it was at least $75,000. Well, you see, I knew that that was going to be a consequence of my vote. I could have taken the easy route. I really could have. I could have just said yes, because it was going to pass anyway.
That's not your style, though.
But
you base it
right.
on
but
the,
it wasn't.
right.
It wasn't right.
Right.
It wasn't the right thing to do for Maplewood at that time.
Right.
Because of the financial downturn in our economy and having to be aware of what's going on in our community, for our business community, for our citizens, for our seniors, for our young families, everybody.
Right, and I think that's so important. You know, people need to know, you know, their council members, you know, are they really looking into their stuff? Are they really researching their information? Are they reviewing their packet before they come to the meeting?
Well, you know, if I can share something with you, you know, just at a recent Maplewood City Council meeting, talking about attention to detail. And I was before the council talking about a particular issue, and I asked the council if they'd had a chance to look at a particular aspect of the information before them. Because I'd been there in a previous meeting and had at that time asked them to do that when that information came available for the next meeting, okay? So I'm up there, and the mayor, our current mayor, he said that, well, no, he didn't really say but he said, no, why would they be looking at all of that? Because they've got people that there isn't anybody that pays as much attention to detail as you, Diana. And I thought, well, thank you. That's a wonderful compliment. I wished I had the clip. I could show it to you.
Oh, that's sad.
I'll have to put it on my website. My website is under construction right now, so I'll have to make sure to put that clip on my website because it's true. I mean, and there were other, and I think it is important though to pay attention to that detail because the elected person is the eyes and the ears of the citizens and the businesses of their community.
Yep.
Who better to know what is really going on than the elected official? They have access to all the information. They are more up to date on what's going on news-wise, business-wise. It is so important as an elected official not to turn a blind eye to that and just think you are somebody different and special, set aside and separate from the citizens, because you're really not. You are their eyes and ears.
Right, absolutely.
That's my opinion anyway.
Absolutely. And Diana, you have an email address, right? So people could send you questions. Is that correct?
Yes, I do indeed. It is longrie4mayor@yahoo.com. And the 4 is the number 4. So it's very easy. Longrie4mayor@yahoo.com. See, that's why it's so easy to remember. Just my last name, the number 4, mayor@yahoo.com.
Great. And I'm sure they'll be putting that up on the screen for us, too, so people can visualize.
Woohoo!
Yes. Yeah. That's catchy. Anyway, and it's all about positivity.
Right.
So that's your campaign.
Yep. And in one of the ideas, and looking forward to the next 4 years in Maplewood, there's several things that I think that Maplewood needs to, that I would like to see Maplewood focus on. One is I think it is important, and the time has come for Maplewood to be split up into wards. And what does this mean for citizens? Well, it means that because of our geographic configuration, the people of the South Maplewood, they have some of the same concerns as the folks in Western Maplewood where I live, but they also have different concerns that are a little bit more particular to their area of Maplewood. And it's the same way you could compare the Central Maplewood with North Maplewood over by the mall. You see, so we have similarities in concerns, but we also have individual neighborhood concerns. And with a ward system, what that would mean is that citizens would be electing a representative from their ward, so that way they could specifically say, I want to talk to my council person about this particular concern about my area. Now, why would this be important? Well, you see, in the last couple years, Maplewood has closed 40% of their fire stations, the one on the west end and the one on the south end. So now we don't have those fire stations for the coverage. If we would have had a ward system, I do believe there would have been a lot more discussion and advocating for keeping fire stations open on the council. Basically, there was no discussion on the council. They just said, oh, eyes all. And that there would have been more of that if the south end and the west end would have had their own city council person, because that city council person would have maybe heard a lot more from their citizens and their constituents in their ward, and they would have been advocating to keep those fire stations open until there's a game plan in place. Because you see, these fire stations were closed without really having a comprehensive game plan other than to say, well, sometime down the road, we're going to build a new fire station. Okay, someday, somewhere down the road, build another fire station, but you just closed 2. So how is it you're building a new one when you closed 2?
Right.
See, so why not leave those open? And of course, then you'll hear, well, there wasn't enough employees to staff them. And yet, I do believe that if we had a ward system here in Maplewood, that there would be more discussion on those kinds of issues. Another reason it might be important as well is that I believe that there's going to be coming up a change of public policy directing the council to prioritize our parks and our open spaces and which ones should be on the block for sale. Now, if your city was set up within a ward system, again, you're going to have advocates who are on the council who are going to advocate for their ward, that their ward doesn't lose their parks,
right,
their open spaces. And I think that we could even go so far to say we could have the parks commissioners also be assigned per ward like
yes,
they do in the other larger cities, so that way, again, you have commissioners from your ward fighting for your park,
right,
for your open space, and so they don't get closed down, that they don't get sold because there's nobody to advocate for them.
Right, absolutely. And I think it'd be really neat that if all of our boards and commissions at the city were like wards. So we had a representative from each ward on each commission.
Yeah, well,
that would be nice.
And it certainly could work out that way, especially for like commissions that have to do with land use or anything like that. And it may very well work well for other ones, for sure.
Sure, absolutely, because I think all our boards and commissions, they represent the whole city anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think it'd mix it up a little bit, and we'd get more volunteers, I believe. It'd be very nice.
And this isn't really like a new novel idea with regard to the commissions, because in our Maplewood ordinances, for some of the commissions, it actually does go so far to say that the intent is to try to have membership from throughout Maplewood. And so our ordinances actually already contemplates that and already has that intent in mind, but they couldn't say it has to be within wards because Maplewood doesn't have wards, so they couldn't say that, but the intent is there. So it's very consistent. So it's just another step in a way to make it formalized, and there is a process for that, and but I think the time is right for Maplewood to do that. And I am very concerned about this upcoming policy change that I believe is in the wind, because we've heard about it at various council meetings and Parks Commission meetings of this desire by the city administration to prioritize the Maplewood parks and open spaces. And there was a push even just only a few months ago to sell a park on the west side of Maplewood for economic development. Well, the neighbors got together. They did a great job of coming out to support their park and to advocate for their park. And they were actually able to reverse a vote on the Parks Commission, and in tune, then that put the pressure on the City Council to also not vote. But you can't rely on that. You can't rely that that's the way it's always going to be.
Right.
And we need to have people on the council who have a commitment to our parks and open spaces, because as time goes on and the future is whatever it is, that is one thing that the city will not be able to easily get back, is its parks and its open space. Once it's gone, and that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, and that would be tragic, because I mean we have so little green already.
Yes.
Anyway, Diana, you're an attorney. What kind of law do you practice? Is there a particular?
Oh, well, that's a great question. A little bit of everything. It's a solo practice. I'm out on my own, have my own shingle right there in the Gladstone area. Frost and English, right where the roundabout is.
That's nice. So you have your business right in the heart of Maplewood.
I do.
Awesome.
Yes, I do indeed. And that's why it's also very easy for people to find me, because they know they can just drive up. If they see my car parked in my office, they know I'm there. They just park and they stop in and say hi. And, I love that. And there's no gatekeeper to keep you from getting through the door. You just come on in and we sit down and talk. Unless I'm busy writing a brief, then I'll have to tell you come back. But other than that, and it's a general practice, so that means pretty much the way I describe to folks is that pretty much any of those issues that cross your kitchen table, other than bankruptcy. I don't do bankruptcy, but family law, probate, contracts, real estate. You need to write a letter to a creditor, or you need to write a letter to somebody to collect some money. Well, either way, if it's something, it's the basic stuff.
So with all of that experience, you have such an in-depth insight of all of those issues, the taxes for everybody and, family circumstances for everybody.
And see, the thing is, because of my practice and working in the neighborhood and with regular folks, I knew about the economic downturn before anybody at City Hall even was breathing a word about it. And I would come to the city council meetings and I would remind them about, and this started about in 2000 and end of 2007 and 8, because that was why we wanted to, in 2007, we froze the property tax levy. We froze it so that it didn't change at all, and that we just had to live with whatever it was from the past year, because I knew that there was that economic downturn that was going on in the economy, because I saw it in what was happening to my clients.
Right.
And it was like many folks up at City Hall wanted to say, no, that's not happening. And I'm going, yes, it is. I know it is.
Right.
I know it is. And true enough, it was.
Well, yeah, you're right there. You have the pulse on the people, so you know what's going on for sure. And I like it. I don't want to say, oh, you're cheap or something, but you're fiscally responsible for sure. And you are always watching the bottom line. And I think that is extremely important in our elected officials for sure. You're not out there just writing checks on somebody else's dime.
Right. And, I knew that the last year that I was mayor in 2009, the budget that was being proposed, I felt was an increase that was not needed. And it was an increase that we didn't, that there were things in there that I just didn't think that they were prioritized right. But I thought it wasn't going to be enough for me just to say, vote no, because then they would come back and say, well, what would you like to do differently? So what I did is I actually put together a budget that I would propose, and how I would use the same amount of money from the past year, and how it would be how we would either increase certain things like bringing back fireworks, but yet decreasing other things. And fireworks is not a big thing. It's $15,000, and we've got a budget of about $40 million. Okay, so but there are other bigger ticket items and other ways that we could adjust things, and so I was able to do items such as, which is very important for our streets, to bring back the seal coating program. That I don't know has been brought back yet. But you see, when we put in all these brand new streets, all this new road reconstruction, within 9 to 11 years, from my information, it is preferred that you do that first seal coating of that street within that 9 to 11 years to help maintain its longevity.
Right.
And so we have streets that are now in their 15th year after road reconstruction that should have had their seal coating done on them already. They are not getting that. And see, so this budget I put together actually put that back into the budget. And you know what? I was told that would only cost about $150,000 to put that into the budget for the streets that were necessary at that time
Really?
to bring them up. Of course, now it would cost more because now we've got a few more years,
Right.
and we've got more streets that would need it. And so there's, so that's an issue with long-term maintenance of your capital investment. You need to take that into account. And there were many other things within that budget too that I brought back in, or that I accounted for, including the fact that if people were successful in their appeals of their property tax property tax appeals, because at that time there were, I think, like 60 property tax appeals of big commercial properties, that if they were successful, Maplewood has to give a portion of that property tax back to those property owners. And so my budget even included money to be able to pay them back in the event that their appeals of their property taxes were successful. Because keep in mind, 3M had a successful appeal that we had to pay them back. Also, several of the big anchor stores up at the mall were successful with theirs, and we had to pay them back.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yep. And that all adds up for sure.
It does.
It does. You've been a great advocate for a lot of people, a lot of neighborhood groups over the years, and they appreciate that as well. And you'll continue to advocate for people, whether you're in office or not. You do that all the time, and people know that they can count on you.
Yes.
And I think that's really important as well. You go around and you speak, like at your organization, the Critical Thinkers Club. Mm-hmm. You do that, and people are asking you to speak all the time, and you're always willing to do that, so that's nice.
Yes. Oh, yeah, and I enjoy doing that because it gives you an opportunity to meet other people and to talk about issues that are important to them.
Do you have anything imparting that you really want a special message to get out to people until we have you back again?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. But I do want to tell the viewers out there that there will be a primary in August of 2013, and we don't really know yet how many candidates will be running for mayor in that primary. But I do ask that when you are considering who to vote for in the primary, keep in mind that the primary is essential because that's how you get your two candidates for November. And so if you don't go out to vote in August and you get to November and find out your candidate's not on the ballot, that's because they didn't make it through the primary. So the primary is a very, very important election. And if you can't make it to the polls to vote in person, you can always vote by absentee ballot. And I do encourage folks to contact me with any kind of questions or concerns you have, or maybe you have ideas, or maybe you have questions about something that happened during my previous tenure as mayor, and I would be more than happy to talk to you frankly about whatever your question might be, because I do believe, as you mentioned, Margaret, I do believe that elected officials have to be able to give a solid explanation to their constituents, and that constituents are entitled to that. And part of having respectful conversations is actually starting with a conversation first, because you can't have a conversation if you never started it.
Absolutely. Well, Diana, thank you so much for coming on the program today. Thank you for being a candidate again for mayor. And I look forward to a wonderful campaign, a positive campaign. And everybody, thanks for coming to the neighborhood today. And as always, everything that was discussed today was the opinion of my guest and myself, and we are brought to you in part through a grant through the Suburban Community Channels and SEC here. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time in our neighborhood.